All right, today we're going to be watching a short helper video on how to use a strategy to figure out, first of all, missing numbers in equivalent ratios, and then how to check to see if two ratios are equivalent. So in our problem, you see I have two different ratios. I have 6 to 2, and then I have 30 to something. We have a missing number in this second ratio. So the first thing we have to do is we've got to figure out what this number is. And the strategy we're going to use, now many of you might be able to easily see this in your head. I'm doing a simple one here so that when you work through the strategy, you can easily visualize it. And then when we get to harder ones, you'll know that strategy and how to attack them. So here I have 6 to 2 and 30 to a missing number. So we're going to set this up like fractions. We learned earlier in this lesson that we can we can write ratios in different ways. One with the colon, another way we can write them is with fractions. So I have 6 to 2. Well, we want to see if that's equal to 30. First numbers we have to put together over, and then we have a missing number. I'm going to use good old x as my variable. All right, so we have to think here. First, look at the top. What is the relationship between 60 and 30? How do I get from 6 to 30? Well, I can think about, okay, 6 times y equals 30, and that's an easy one for this. But what happens if it's not an easy visual one to see? So I'm going to try to work backwards. Well, what is 30 divided by 6? 30 divided by 6 is 5. So that means if I work backwards, and if I know 30 divided by 6 is 5, that means that 30 divided by 5 is 6. So if I'm working this way, 30 divided by 5 will get me that 6. So if we know that if we move this way, it's divided by 5, the opposite is to move the other way and times by 5. Because you go up here, 6 times 5 would be 30. So I apply it to the bottom because the ratios have to be the same thing. So 2 times 5 equals 10, which could be our missing number. Now, I'm going to show you a strategy on how to check to see if a ratio is equivalent or not. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to set it up with fractions. 6 over 2 equals 30 to now 10. That's what we tried to figure out. We're going to use a strategy called cross multiplying, which means I multiply kind of in an X. I'm going to multiply cross numbers. And if those numbers come up as the same, that means we have an equivalent ratio. So if I take 2 times 30, 2 times 30 is 60. All right. 6 times 10 is 60. Those numbers are the same, which means that these ratios are equivalent. Let's look at a little more complex one now. We have 16 to 4 as one ratio equals, and now we're missing the first number to 6. All right. Our first strategy is always to set it up in that fraction form. 16 to 4 equals something. I'm going to use x again. You could use any letter you want, any variable you want, something to 6. Now in the last one, we could easily see, okay, 5 went into 30. Well, it's hard to see, okay, how does 4 go into 6? How does 4 go into 6? There is not a whole number that I can multiply by 4 to get to 6. So I have to work backwards. Well, 6 divided by 4 is going to be this number. So I'm going to hop over to my calculator because we can use calculators with these. 6 divided by 4 is 1.5, all right? Which means that if I took 4 times 1.5, I would get 6. Go back over here just to prove to you 1.5 times 4 gets me 6. Awesome. So we figured out our bottom number, or what we're multiplying by. Now we just have to apply the same thing to the top. Well, if we did times 1.5 on the bottom, we do times 1.5 on the top. 16 times 1.5. 16 times 1.5 gets me 24. And there's our missing number, 24. But I want to double check just to make sure that these ratios are equivalent. All right. I have 16 over 4 equals 24 to 6. And remember, to check to see if two ratios are equivalent, you cross multiply. Well, 16 times 6, let's go back over here. 16 times 6 gets me 96. All right, 16 times 6 is 96. So we got to hope that 4 times 24 is 96, and then we have an equivalent ratio. So 4 times 24 equals 96. Boom. We've got some equivalent ratios. We've figured out that missing number.